o'clock, so we'll get started. Welcome to our 4 o'clock council meeting. Appreciate y'all being here. We will call the meeting to order. We do have a quorum. We'll declare the meeting open. I'm going to ask Councilman Holland if he'll lead us with the pledge and invocation.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Shall we pray? Lord in heaven, we come to you with bowed heads and humbled hearts, thanking you for all that you do, knowing that without you it's not possible. Lord, I want to thank you for the blessings that we have received in this town and the blessings that we'll continue to receive. Lord, I want you to continue and also give me special prayer for my first responders. And as we leave this building today, Lord, I pray that everyone exits this building and make it home safely. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. All right, council, did you have a minute? Did you have an opportunity to review the minutes for the meeting of January 7th?
Move to approve the minutes of January the 7th.
Second.
Okay, motion is second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. All right, we are to the consent agenda. These items are considered to be routine and will be enacted in one motion without discussion unless a council member or a citizen requests a specific item be discussed and voted on separately. The consent agenda includes items C1, C2, C3, D1, D2, D3, E4, and E6. Would anyone like to separate any of those items for any reason? Okay. If not, can we get a motion on consent?
I move to approve as written, Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
I second.
Motion second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? They are approved. Thank you. All right, we're going to take E3 out of order. We'll receive a financial update presentation from Mary.
We're going to have a brief financial update. First, we're going to look at the general fund. First thing you'll notice here, we have a projection from the workshop, how we ended up 2018. The biggest difference here, you'll notice the revenues. If you look down here, we had thought we'd be at about 78 days of fund balance. We ended up at 84. And this is entirely due to good sales tax performance. So when we built the budget for 19, we thought we'd be at about 77 days of fund balance at the end of 19. We're now projecting 82, again, because of sales tax. Now, a lot of this is one-time money from industrial construction, which I think we know what that is. But we're still up even this year about 5%, just an underlying really good growth rate under a broad spectrum of industries. Here's a little bit closer look at sales tax. Down here at the bottom you see projected 18, actual budget, and projected again. So another item we wanted to update was some information on the property tax rate. This is where we currently are. There's the debt part, there's the part for operations. That is our total rate that was adopted by the council for this fiscal year. The comptroller has us calculate two other rates. One is the effective tax rate, the other is the rollback rate. So the effective tax rate is the rate that would raise the same amount of dollars as last year using property tax in both years. So the rollback rate takes the prior year M&O rate. It adds a rate for the sales tax in lieu of property tax, adds 8% to that, and that gives you your operations part. Then the debt service part goes on top of that. So there's a seesaw effect. So as our sales tax and our property values go up here, our rollback rate goes down. So remember this seesaw effect. A couple items of interest about the rollback rate. The debt service rate, portion of the rate can rise as high as it needs to, and it doesn't affect high as necessary to fund the debt service. And what that does, that gives an assurance to our bondholders that the rate is not going to be capped because of debt service, so they'll be sure and get their money back. The operations rate does include our non-debt capital spending, and the sales tax and the property tax is included in the rollback rate, just like it is paid by City of Sherman residents. So even though half of our sales tax is paid by people who don't live here, it's treated for purposes of calculating the rollback rate as if it's paid by our property tax owners, our property owners. So this is important this year because there's a legislative agenda by the governor for a revenue cap. And what it would do would be to decrease the rollback rate from, instead of that 8% on the operations part, down to 2.5%. And there's some other caveats on that, such as anything above the 2.5% cap could only be used for certain purposes. You know, and we look at this and think, well, you know, really city property taxes, you know, if they're trying to address property tax revenue as being too burdensome, it's really not the cities that are doing it. Statewide, city property tax is about 16% of all the property tax revenue. So it's really not cities that are driving the problem. I think they're trying to address with the revenue cap. Another provision in there is that no increase, even for certain purposes, in excess of a statewide increase in population. So this would really hurt growing cities. There's also a Senate committee looking at some other proposals. One is to remove the TIF exclusion from the effective tax rate calculation. What that would do would be to lower the rollback rate even further. So this is a historical look at how the city of Sherman has done it, and these are not showing up as well as I want. These orange bars are the M&O rate. So you can see our M&O rate in 2015, 0.352. It went down in 2016, 0.332, up a little bit in 17, 348, remained 348 in 18, and actually we've gone back down in 2019. What this tells us is we've done a pretty good job of managing our operations, that our operations rate is actually staying the same or decreasing since 2015. These lines up here, this bottom one is our effective tax rate. The top one's our rollback rate, and you can see we stay below the current rollback rate. And this graph just shows the same thing. This red dotted line is just a trend line for general fund expenditures. This gray line is the trend line for our M&O rate, and you can see it is now below the trend line for the general fund expenditures. We've been going down since 2015. So we did a projection on where we're going to be if the rollback rate did decrease. And we have the same bars here. And we have the rollback rate at 2.5%. And so this bar in like 2020, 2021, that's just our current adopted rate right now, 42.73 cents that we saw on the first property tax slide. So you can see at 2.5%, our rollback rate could very well be below our current adopted rate. And the rollback rate is important because if the council proposes a rate that is above the rollback rate, the voters can petition for a rollback election. If that succeeds, then we adopt the rollback rate. So there's a few takeaways here. Again, the first bullet point just talks about that seesaw effect between rising sales tax and property values lowering our rollback rate. The city has done a good job at managing our operations, as evidenced by the decrease in the M&O rate. We don't need a revenue cap because citizens always have the power to influence the tax rate through you and through elections. And the revenue cap proposal really limits our ability to determine how we fund our city operations. If we want to raise our rate, if we don't want to raise our rate, that's really your choice, and not someone in Austin. So, and that we are penalized by our increases in sales tax on our rollback rate, even though our property owners are not paying that sales tax. So, Robbie, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Yeah, so there's no action to take on any of this. We're really just trying to highlight kind of two main points. One was the first few slides were that things have over the past year have turned out better than we projected, which is generating some revenue that gives us additional fund balance that will be useful to know as we see our next two presentations. So that's one. The second is this idea of the revenue cap is particularly important as we continue our march forward in progress, building roads and parks and libraries. It's going to just create a whole lot of pressure for us to really and could limit us in our ability to do those things, depending on where they land. They're also, the governor's office is considering not only an element of the revenue cap overall, but also capping that amount of debt in the rate, which, as you can see, our issue hasn't been that we've our M&O rate, which funds our salaries and light bill and materials, that's not been a problem. That's actually gone down. We've done a great job of managing that. Our issue is we're in the mode of building roads, which is incredibly expensive, and so we could be curtailed in our ability to do the projects that we believe need to be done ahead of the growth or as the growth is happening with what's going on down in Austin. So it's a concern of ours. We have folks on our behalf that are trying to get the message heard, but ultimately it's a political contest, I guess I would say, and at the state level. And I believe there is going to be a revenue cap in place that is lower than the current cap. The level at which it happens could have a dramatic effect on us, is really what I want you to get. We'll know more about that as we go, but those thoughts and those knowing what's going on will certainly impact our planning for 2020 as we've already kind of started that internally here, and we'll continue to have those meetings as we go. But I want you guys to know about both of those things. So,
Thank you, Mary.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mary.
Nate's got a couple of presentations as well.
Yes, for E1 and E2. Nate, you want to give us a report from the ongoing projects in the city and also?
What sets this growing city of 45,000 people apart?
There you go.
Yeah. So this video is going to be a little bit different than the one that we usually do. Robbie attended a conference a couple weeks ago, and in anticipation of going to that conference, he wanted us to put together a video that highlighted some of the projects that were going around. It's kind of a retail-specific video because that was the folks that he was talking to. But it does incorporate a lot of the projects that we would talk about anyway, so we thought we'd go ahead and show you that. Jenny, can you roll it back to the beginning and start it?
Why Sherman? What sets this growing city of 45,000 people apart? Why should you invest in the retail hub of North Texas? In a word, the answer is growth. The same influx of families and businesses that forever changed Allen, Plano, and McKinney is continuing north of Highway 75, and Sherman is next in line. In fact, it's already begun. The city's population has surged, growing at 3 times the normal rate. More than 1,000 people are moving here every year, and that number is poised to skyrocket. Sherman's South Side will be the epicenter of that boom, the Legacy Village development, anchored by a 75,000 square foot entertainment complex, will sit on a stretch of Highway 75 that sees more than 62,000 vehicles a day. Traffic's increased 10% year over year. Phase 2 of the Legacy Village project will add another $25 million in new investment. A full-service 150-bed hotel will adjoin a conference center featuring 20,000 square feet of meeting space. To the east of Legacy Village, the Bel Air development will be 250 acres of mixed-use residential and commercial, including a park and elementary school. Across Highway 75 to the west, Sherman Crossroads will be home to a state-of-the-art medical complex along with numerous restaurants and shops. But business is nothing without skilled workers, and Sherman is planning ahead to provide those skills. A $150 million project to relocate Sherman High School is already under construction, a project that will forever transform Southwest Sherman. The 2,600 student facility will open in the fall of 2020, complete with an in-house advanced manufacturing program. And the private sector has already taken notice. The 400 acres to the south of the high school is earmarked for hundreds of new homes and shopping center and office park. And to the north, past the town center development that draws tens of thousands of shoppers into the city every day, Sherman Landing sits on the city's northern border. The convenience store and bank will soon be complemented by even more retail and residential development. So why Sherman? Because it's the next great city in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex.
So that's whet your appetite a little bit. We've got a couple more videos. We'll start here in a second to kind of go over some of the other projects. But we did want to kind of show you that highlights kind of the major retail developments that we do have going on, especially on the south side. So what we did is we threw that on 20 different flash drives, and then as Robbie was conducting meetings with people and things like that, it was something that he could provide them to kind of show them exactly what's going on in Sherman. Now to our more traditional videos. This will be our final update on the dog park now that it is officially open. It has enjoyed a lot of success, a lot of people getting out there. So just thought we'd show you the aerial view. This is the Moore Road Solar Farm, which is complete now and is in the final testing phases. They expect that they'll be generating power out of that facility by the end of next month. So that's something that's been a long time coming, several years in the planning process. Of course, there's the expanded substation there. And then if you'll notice here, at the top of the screen, this big open space here, they've already done the clearing there. That's contemplated as a actual second phase to this project, so that's not something they've committed to just yet. But clearly they feel good enough about what they're doing at that location that they've already cleared the land. So if they do want to expand that and add additional solar panels, they can relatively easily. All right, down here, this is oh shoot, wrong button. This is Quail Run. So down here, this is the area where the park will go in. This is Country Ridge over here, the preserve here. This is where they're building right now, 76 lots in that area. They've already got streets and piping going in there, and then of course from there it'll push further to the west. The preserve is on the other side. This is 42 lots that are going in this field right here. That's already been platted. And then Caddy Corner, this of course is was the controversial apartment project that ended up not getting built. So instead they're going to put in about 100 different residential lots, and then this area along 1417 will be dedicated 4 to 6 commercial lots there as well. And that's actually, I believe, going to be heard at the Planning and Zoning meeting right after we are done today. Brookstone, of course, they're opening the apartments every day, more apartments opening. And then this here behind the apartments is the area of the Brookstone development that will actually connect into Pebblebrook. This road back here is South Ridge, which runs along the backside of the development there. And that'll tie in at, I think, 2 different locations to Pebblebrook, as well as provide its own access to 1417. And then right here is the area where the city's looking to put in a park/trailhead that will tie into Herman Baker to allow access from that neighborhood and from Pebblebrook directly into the park. So you can see this is all single family here. And they've got their roads laid out. We're flying out of Pecan Grove Park now, so this is West Canyon Creek Estates. They've platted a couple of these cul-de-sacs with lots that are up for sale. They don't have, and as far as I know, any building going on there just yet. And they have it designed to continue on into this area here. A little bit larger lots, probably third to half acre lots, so fewer houses, but some real nice housing stock there. And then, of course, Pecan Grove. They are still in the clearing stage. They've been slowed down a lot by the wet conditions today. Certainly won't help any at all. But you can kind of tell they've done most of the clearing at this point, and then they'll move on to grading after that. But that project is finally underway. And then finally, this is Lake Street. This is a project, of course, we've been talking about for years at this point, so we're flying west. This is the portion of Lake Street that will remain after the Park Street extension is built. We'll flip around the other way so you can see it both directions. So Park Street will tie in right there, and then this is the portion of Lake Street that will remain open. Just pay no attention to the junk in anybody's yard there. And then right here will actually be the cul-de-sac. So that'll be the end of the street before they get to the railroad tracks. And then as you can see, this has already been abandoned. The road's been torn up, and that's been turned back over to the property owners. So the city no longer is involved in that part of Lake Street. And of course, you'll see why here as we fly over Little Creek, where the washout occurred. Still nothing there. And then this, of course, just last meeting was turned over to Douglas Distributing for about $100,000. They're going to incorporate that into their facility so they can drive between the two. And then we're going to flip around and take a look at Park here. And the final holdup on this is, of course, the railroad. We're just waiting for the final okay from them so that we can proceed with construction. So this is Park Street, which will kind of go like this. This is tying in here, which you see. And then it'll kind of swing off to this side and head over here and connect up. There'll be a box culvert that runs over this creek here to prevent flooding in the future. And then, of course, 2 railroad tracks to cross before we meet back up. And then here's where it ties in with that little cul-de-sac portion of lake right there. And that portion of Park right here as it goes toward First Street will remain. Well, it'll be renamed Park. So that's the video. It's pretty short this month because we knew we had a short meeting, but we did want to give you an update on some of those projects. Any question on any of that?
Thank you.
Okay, cool.
Thanks, Nate.
Thanks a lot, Nate. All right.
Okay. We'll receive an update from Nate on the city's Quality Neighborhoods program. Come on up, Nate.
Mr. Mayor, Council, thank you so much for having me here today. This has been a long time coming. We have made several changes to this program over the course of the last couple of years, so we kind of wanted to give you an update on what's going on with our Quality Neighborhoods program, as well as what we think the future of that program will hopefully look like. It was March of last year when the council approved the hiring of a neighborhood quality coordinator to overtake our substandard structure program, as well as take over substantial portions of the community development block grant and cross-train with code enforcement to kind of be a Swiss Army knife over there that can do a lot of different things for us. We hired Chip, who's here today. On May 1st of 2018, he took over the program and immediately set into making his impact on it. He's done this in a number of other cities, and we are lucky he is now here to do it with us. For the 2018-19 budget year, we budgeted $125,000 for substandard remediation. $100,000 of that came from the block grant, which is restricted as to where it can be used, and then we put $25,000 in city funds for other projects outside that target area. And the good news is that the money has been spent. Chip has really done a tremendous job, really a yeoman's job over the course of the last 6 to 8 months, getting 60 different structures on 44 different properties around the city torn down. And so what we're going to do today is we're going to look at 5 different case studies that kind of exhibit what this program is about and what we think it's accomplished. This is the map. It's not that easy to see, I guess, but you can kind of see the council districts there and there, just to show you that this is something that is impacting every portion of the city, not just the portions where you might think. Our first study is going to be inside the target area. So the Community Development Block Grant, of course, allows us to go in and remove blighted properties from certain areas of the city, and those areas are defined by how much money the people living there make, and that's done through census blocks. So beginning with this budget year, we've shifted a substantial portion of money away from how we were spending it, which was on an entitlement program that funded renovations, small-scale renovations for people. And though we're still doing a little bit of that, we put a lot more money this year toward the demolition program because it is something that we wanted to ramp up and really move forward on. So the $100,000 is all but spent at this point. There's a little bit of money left over, but certainly not enough to get us through the rest of the year. A number of projects to highlight there on Chisholm Trail, which is over in Laurel Creek. Not a neighborhood you typically associate with blight, but there was a house there that was in a very bad condition, and certainly because of the quality of the neighborhood around it. That was one that we prioritized very early. 1108 East Lamar, that was something that came to the council before. A large white two-story structure, had a lot of problems with people living in it unauthorizedly. And of course, it's on a major thoroughfare, so that was another one we wanted to make sure we targeted. And then what we're going to look at in a little bit more detail is 605 East Lake, which if you've never driven by it, don't feel bad. It's in a pretty remote location, but it has a long history of safety issues, and that's really why we wanted to focus on it. This is from our Ptolemy software that we showed you guys last year. This is a list of just a kind of a quick snapshot of how often this property has required city services, both the police, code enforcement, and fire calls as well over the course of the last 5 years. And that's really a focus of this program. We want these properties at the end of the day to not require these services anymore, because that's one way that the program ends up paying itself back. So we'll kind of go through some of these pictures. The house, of course, was in pretty terrible shape. There was somebody at some point living in this van, and a lot of trash, a lot of debris, just a pretty ugly property that was causing a lot of problems. And this is the after. That's where the house sat before, and then this is kind of the remainder of the property here. So as you can see, they went in and just kind of cleared everything off, got rid of all the trash, all the junk vehicles, and the structure itself. Our second case study is a city-funded demolition. So the way that the block grant works out is there are certain areas of the city we just can't use that money. The federal government will not let us use that money to tear down blight in neighborhoods where people are making too much money, basically. But because it's based on census tracts, it doesn't always make sense which areas of the city those are. So as you can see, the pink area there is the block grant area. There's a big hole missing on East Sherman where Austin College sits. Basically, the incomes in that area are just too high. And then in West Sherman, this area includes a lot of neighborhoods that are very nice, including Laurel Creek, because of the high concentration of apartments over there. It drives down income and allows these census tracts to be included. And we did want to point out that just 5 years ago, if you were to look at this same map, literally all of East Sherman would have been pink. So there has been a lot of progress made in that area to move five census tracts on the east side out of the target area, which is good. It means people's incomes in that area is increasing. It means the housing stock is better, but it also means that we can't go in and spend this federal money there. So notable properties, 415 North Grand, that's of course Grand Avenue, a major thoroughfare through the city. It was a burnout. I'm sure many of you have seen it. Had boarded up windows, and sitting on that major street was one we wanted to make sure we got down. We'll talk a little bit more about that property here in a minute. And then we're going to take a deeper dive into 912 East Pecan. It's located on a major road. The house is in terrible shape, and it illustrates something else about this program that I think is kind of neat. As you can see, the roof falling off, windows boarded up, trash inside, and that's what it looks like when we're done. Nice, clean lot. But the reason why I love this property as a showcase for kind of what this program does is if you take a step back, so this is where that house sat. And on either side of it, you have 2 houses that are occupied where families are living. In the case of the house on the left, an incredibly nice, well-kept house, manicured lawn, brand new fence. So when we're going in and we're tearing down these houses, we're not just providing a service to the property owner, which we certainly are, but we really view this, we called it the Neighborhood Quality Program because it does really focus on the quality of the neighborhood as a whole. It's not just benefiting this guy, it's benefiting this guy, and it's benefiting this guy, and it's benefiting the guy across the street too. High-profile areas. We definitely want to focus our efforts, not always, but sometimes on areas that are highly traveled, because we do want to make sure that we're projecting an image of Sherman that to both visitors and people that live here. So we focus on, some of these streets here that I've listed that have all had at least one demolition in the course of the last 6 months. Several of them have had more than one demolition. And we're going to look at the 500 block of First Street, which was our most ambitious and our most expensive project that we've tackled to date. There were 7 residential lots, several buildings, and more than a dozen junk vehicles spread across these 7 different lots. So it has taken a lot of work. They're actually still out there today, still cleaning. And there were actually 5 people living on the property with no water, no sewer, and no trash service. And you'll see what they did with their trash here in a minute. So this was the structure. There's just kind of a pile of trash, the mattress on top. Again, numerous vehicles, none of which were in working condition. You can't really make out the trash as well as you can on a smaller screen. And then inside, we've got people sleeping on lawn chairs, just kind of trash, ceiling falling down. And this is the completed lot. That's where the house was right there. They've cleared out all the trash, all the house, all the junk vehicles, and what's left is really a very nice lot that sits on a corner of 2 very busy streets. So that's certainly something where we would hope someone would come in and redevelop that. And speaking of redevelopment, infill is our 4th thing that we're going to look at today, because the end goal of the program is really infill. We want these lots to be reactivated. We want them to be reused. We want them to be recycled. And we think that that's the best way for the city to get a return on the investment when somebody's coming in and putting a new house on a lot that the city has paid to clean up. A number of notable cases, 515 First, which we just looked at, that goes to the sheriff's sale not next month, in April. Houses on Elm and Ross are both being rebuilt already. The one we talked about on North Grand, that lot sold 2 days after the demolition was complete, and they started construction on that last week. So there'll be a new house there. Several acres on Woods, and then further down on First Street, which is what we're going to look at a little closer, was actually replatted and ready for redevelopment. This is kind of more of the same, houses falling down, uninhabitable, junk piles lying all around. So we go in, we clean it up, a nice large lot, nice trees, and then just a couple months ago that went before P&Z to be developed into not 1 but 3 new houses there, so certainly another success story. Our final case study, this is a house that is still standing today that we're going to look at. We estimate, based on the number of inactive water accounts multiplied by the likelihood that those structures are substandard, there's probably 800 to 850 houses that would qualify for this program today that we could go in and either tear down or have brought up to code. So there's a wide variety and a wide pool to choose from here. We currently have 16 homes in the pipeline. That's in various stages, whether they've had the voluntary demolition note already signed or whether they're preparing to go before the court that we established earlier last year. Walk-ins, we've had an increase in people just coming into the office and voluntarily signing their properties up, which is the best thing for us, because that way it requires the least amount of work on our part, it requires the least amount of work on their part. We can go in and get it done and get these things turned over in a short amount of time. And we do emphasize that voluntary compliance. It's a lot easier to tear down someone's house when they agree to have that house torn down than it is to fight them on it, although we do have certain cases where that happens. And then improvements in the process. We really can't stress this enough. What Chip has been able to do in the time that he has come in is take the process that he's used in other cities and really brought that here. It's almost an assembly line process to where he can go and he can move dozens of houses at a time through this program if the funds are available to do that. So this house is still standing today. This is on Cardinal Lane in Country Ridge. It certainly doesn't look substandard if you were just to drive by it on the street. That car hasn't been registered since 2008. If you go around the side, we've got broken windows, and then, well, we missed a slide there, but the roof's caved in, basically. So this is where the roof is caved in, and then it really doesn't get any better from there. And this is an individual who Curtin certainly could afford to take care of this house if they needed to, but they no longer live here and they no longer care what happens to the house. So this is really a poster child for what we hope to accomplish when we do take when we do need to take a case to court, when we can't find the owner or when the owner just doesn't care. He has enough money, he doesn't care what happens to this house.
Because it looked normal from the front. How did you find it?
Complaints from neighbors.
Oh, okay.
Let's see here. Yeah, not good. So this really is emblematic of where we want the program to keep going and why we want it to keep moving forward and not have to wait on that. So the pros of the program, of course, it removes blight, minimal input, increases neighborhood property values, both the property that we touch and the properties around it. Allows for infill development like we looked at, reduces the need for city services like we looked at. And then, of course, it improves the health, safety, and quality of life for the neighbors. Not only are these properties eyesores, but they're attractive nuisances for crime. And, of course, you can imagine the pest problems that come around with a house like that there on Cardinal Lane. That's not confined to the property. That spills into all the neighborhood properties as well. And ultimately, at the end of the day, it increases revenue through additional property values for the city. The cons of the program, it is expensive. It takes an average of $6,000 to tear down a house for somebody. And on a $125,000 infill build for the city portion of the property taxes, take about 11 years for the city to make its money back. So it is really a long-term process for us. And the large demolitions cost a lot more. The house that you saw on Lamar Street, or I guess you didn't see it this time, but previously had seen on Lamar Street, a large 3,000 square foot, 2 stories. That's $15,000 to tear down a house that size. So it is an expensive program. It's not means tested, so the program benefits both people that have no means to do this themselves, no means to fix up these properties, just the same as it benefits people who do. We don't necessarily think that's a bad thing because the goal of the program is not necessarily to help those who can't, although that is a benefit. The goal of the program is to remove these houses, remove these structures from the neighborhoods and move those neighborhoods on. Voluntary compliance has been high and is increasing. One thing we'd like to look at in the future is the ability to place liens on properties that we do take to court. So anytime we do have somebody that is either can't be found or it just says, you know what, I'm not going to worry about it, they don't respond to our certified mail, we can go to that person and say, okay, well, we're going to tear down your house for you and we're going to put a $6,000 lien on it at the end of the day too. That works both ways. If the person does not comply, then the city is able to recoup some of that money or all of that money. Anytime we're taking a case to court, it's costing us more money, so it's a fair trade. But it's also it's a useful stick as well to go to somebody and say, look, this is something that's going to affect the material value of this property to you. So if you're not willing to cooperate with the city and bring this up to code, we will be seeking our money back. And it's time consuming. This is one case file for one piece of property on First Street. It takes a lot of paperwork to get one of these done. Thankfully, we have Chip, who's incredibly organized in putting these together. So what's the ask? Why are we here? Well, a top council priority over the course of the last year has been cleaning up the city. We've done a number of different programs, launched initiatives to make that happen. We got our increased code enforcement through our neighborhood refresh, where we're going around to focused areas of the city every quarter and doing proactive code enforcement. We have our crackdown on bulk waste, which we discussed late last year. That's currently in the first month of live rollout. We did a soft rollout where we were not charging people any fees, but we were just kind of trying to raise awareness. Come January 1st, that program is in full effect, as where people are putting their bulk trash out at times that it should not be out. And then substandard demolition, we've increased the budget, we've hired new staff, and we've increased the priority of the program. But we are a victim of our own success. We found an expert in Chip, and he's done great things. He's established a process that allows this to move very quickly and allows us to ramp it up if we want to do that. And the municipal court that was established, of course, a couple months ago has also helped with that in giving some certainty to the staff in knowing when these cases are going to be heard. And we know, like we discussed, that the pike is full. We've got as many houses as we can pay to tear down. They're out there. As I've become fond of saying, and every time I've done this presentation, this isn't just low-hanging fruit. This is fruit that's literally lying on the ground, waiting to get picked up. But the council ultimately decides what the direction of the program will be and how far we go and how fast. So this is our plan. What we'd like to do is we'd like to get to a point at some point in the next year or so where we're knocking down 100 different structures a year. We think that would really allow us to take a big bite out of this. But to do so would cost a lot of money, over $500,000 if we were paying retail, if we were paying somebody else to do the job for us. Now that we have Chip in place and now that he has kind of refined his process, we've crossed a threshold, and we'll look at a graph here that kind of explains that a little bit better, where we think it makes more sense to move the entire operation in-house and fund it out of the city rather than be paying somebody else to be tearing these houses down. So what we'd like to do is we'd like to hire a 3-person crew that would run an excavator, a skid steer, and a dump truck that could tackle these projects at Chip's direction that would be city employees. They'd be using city equipment. The cost of doing that is dependent on how many houses we actually knock down, but if we were able to get to that 100-home number, it'd be about $375,000 to knock down 100 homes in a year. And we propose funding that substantially through the Community Development Block Grant, just like we currently do, within the city kicking in funds for houses that are outside the target area. The funding would work very much the same way. It would just be supersized more or less. So this is a chart that kind of explains to you the point that we've reached and why we're here today discussing this. The blue line you'll see there, you can't read the legend, that's what it costs to tear down houses at different numbers, starting at 10 down here and getting to 100 here, by paying somebody else to do it. So the economies of scale work very much against us the more we do. The orange line is what it would cost to fund the program in-house, and this number right here is 50. So it's more or less 50 homes in a given year. Once we cross that point, it makes more sense for us to be doing it ourselves rather than paying somebody else to do it. And then the line down here, this is the general fund impact. So because we are funding this much of the program through federal funds, through federal dollars, the general fund impact, of course, is a lot less than the total impact of the program. Excuse me. So the plan would be that we would use the grant money to pay for the costs of demolitions within the target area, as well as the way that the program is set up is that we can backfill the costs of our equipment use. So we say that we used an excavator for 30 hours to tear down a house in the target area. Well, then we can bill the federal government for the use of that excavator. So that would be how we would get to that 225 number. We would need those 4 pieces of equipment, which we could either pay for up front, which would eliminate about $60,000 a year from the program if we did that. We could use the windfall sales tax, the windfall sales taxes that Mary talked about to do that, or if it made more sense, we could lease that equipment. We estimate that the cost savings to the city on an average sized house would be about $2,000 per property. That would be a lot less on smaller houses. That would be a lot more on larger houses. So what I like about this is that right now, if we do come across a structure like that 1108 Lamar, that is going to be a $15,000 structure, we have to really take a hard look at doing that instead of doing 2 houses somewhere else. But if we have our own crew, really all we're paying for is the tipping fees at that point. So the incremental cost of doing that larger structure is far less than it would be to do it through a third party. And we think that we could have this turned around pretty quickly. Chip has managed crews like this before in other cities, so we're not worried about the management side of things at all. We think we could have the people hired by March 1st, and the goal would be to do 50 additional demolitions this year. So this is kind of how this started out, is we said, you know, how can we get another 50 houses torn down this year? Do we want to go and do we want to ask the council for that money, or do we want to think outside the box and discuss a way that we can get those houses torn down for less money this year, while also setting ourselves up in future years for being able to replicate that kind of production? So that's the gist of it. That's the long and the short.
So there's no council action on this particular thing tonight. Really what we're looking for is kind of a head nod that you want us to continue to progress on the trajectory that we've been. Chip has done a fantastic job with this program. and really exceeded expectations. So we're left with, we're out of money for this year. We've got additional funding and fund balance to carry us through the rest of this year, to do more, to do basically nearly double what we've already done this year, and doing 50 houses. And then the plan would be to shift the majority of this program's cost to our CDBG program. So it's not coming out of local taxpayer funds, it's coming out of the federal funds that we get through the CDBG program. So just looking for you guys to object now for the rest of the year if you don't want us to continue at the pace that we have been in tearing down these structures. And then, of course, we'll talk about next year during the budget process that'll be upcoming in the next couple of months, next few months.
Can I ask a few questions?
Yeah, absolutely.
So you got started pretty quick there, and I was trying to catch up to you, but
I was told to go fast.
so we appropriated about $125,000 to begin
Yes.
this fiscal year, and you said we've taken down how many houses to date?
Yeah, so
60.
I thought that would probably be the first question. I probably should have put it in there. So that because Chip started in the middle of a budget year, he had 2 budgets to work with. So he basically spent, so that includes everything he did last budget year plus everything he's done this budget year.
So with
which is why those numbers don't match up.
Are you able to tell me with the $125,000 that we started with in October, what did we take down? What have we taken down since October? With the $125,000 that we appropriated in this year's budget?
Off the top of my head, I can't give you that exact number, but it would be 125,000 divided by 6, more or less, because that's how we got to the average.
Okay, because the 125,000 was, and for some reason I had 60 houses. I picked up that you said 60 houses.
60
Yeah, 60
structures.
structures,
60
yeah.
structures, yeah. And that we're not, so there's a structure, so usually every house, every property that we touch, we tear down the house and usually an outbuilding as well. So, and that's included in the $6,000. So the structures, and
Okay.
that's why the structures and the
That's what I
properties
thought, 'cause
don't.
You were saying
match up.
6,000, and then when I ran the math on that, it was about 2,000. But you picked up some budget money from,
Right.
Previous year, that's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, he started the program back in, was it March that you came?
May.
May. So he got a running start. You know, we did some pre-chip, and then he's really kind of supersized it and mashed on the gas, improved our processes that really allow us to get
So
these in.
yeah, when he took over the program, we had almost all of the previous year budget remaining. So he had that. So he's really done 6 months of work on the last year. He's done a year's worth of work with 6 months worth of money
Understood.
twice, if
Yeah.
that makes sense.
and you guys have identified that would meet these qualifications about 850 structures within the city that.
Yeah, up to that, yeah.
that
That's
could come
correct.
down.
We've got
Yeah.
several years of work of doing 100 houses a year to keep our plates full.
Well, I mean, this is something that we've asked for and talked about, and I mean,
Right.
I think that it's something that we need to, and I'm hoping that Pam I'd like a copy of this so I could look
Yeah.
at this a little closer, but I mean, they've put together an idea and a way to pay for this, and I mean, we've done nothing but ask for this
Right.
to take
So,
place.
I
and
I
this
think we're
is-
all probably in agreement that
At least
we
to
need to
take the
look
next
at this.
steps.
Yeah, need
Yeah,
to look at
just
this
for
one more step.
just for
Okay.
the remainder of this year, and then we'll come back again and when we adopt the 2020 budget to
Yeah.
And so we would
have our
still
plan.
continue to use the grant money to plug in, and we would just use budget money on top of that.
Yeah,
If I'm
so
reading that
so
right.
the grant money for this current year that we're in, 2019, would be all used up here in the next month or
right.
so. So for the remainder of this year, we would use general fund reserves that are 11 days higher than we thought. So we'd use that 150 or 200,000 that we project. We would use the rest of the year would be from the general fund. Next year, for 2020, we would expect that a majority of the costs come from the CDBG. So instead of spending $100,000 next year of CDBG like we did this year, we're proposing that it would be $200 and some odd thousand.
Right, and then that money can only be used in the designated areas.
Just in
and
the
then
target
our
areas,
money would
correct.
be used in the,
Yeah.
in the other
Okay.
areas.
Do you mind if I ask Nate? Nate, can I ask you something real quick? So to understand that if we were to take how much we would spend in a 6-month window currently, it would be roughly $300,000 if we kept with the same pace versus taking this in-house, it's $375 for an entire year.
That it really is what it boils down to, is a question of pace, is that Chip can somewhat go as fast as he has the money available to go. So it's a question of, do we want to keep paying as you go, which is what we've been doing, or do we want to put the crew in place at a substantial upfront investment and say, go get as many as you can get?
Well, I think the type of year we've been having here in Sherman, I think we need to continue doing what we're doing. And
Okay.
I would say we need to look into also maybe adding some personnel or man time to going and enforcing code violations around the city.
And we
as well.
have, yeah, we've added an extra person and a half, employee and a half over the course of the last 2 years, and
Excluding Chip.
excluding Chip, yeah.
Well, I just, we got Chip and we got the judge and we built this big machine, and I say we keep it full of gas and keep it running.
Okay, thank you.
But you're
I
talking
agree.
about hiring more people, right, to do this? You're talking about adding more staff?
Yes.
Are you talking about once you get this done, that those people will lose their job? Or we're talking about continuing to do it from now on?
Continuing to do it from now on, yes.
At least
One
for-
more
at least
question.
for a
I know
few
we're
years.
under the gun here apparently, but
I know this one.
so this is totally separate, and this is another thing we always discuss, but this has nothing to do with commercial structures.
Correct. Yeah, this is residential only.
Right.
We need
No
to.
way that Superman Chip can tie this in commercial.
Well, so the short answer is there's a whole lot
Said he
more
could.
difficulty with commercial because you get into asbestos abatement and some other things. So
Got a lot
while
of-
we would like to do that, the low-hanging fruit or the fruit on the ground is the residential properties that we've
We need to get us
identified.
a ladder.
Do we have something in place where the residents know that if they want that taken care of, they can come to the city?
Well, that's what we've been really encouraged to see over the course of the last 6 months, is we really feel like that word of mouth is getting out there. And just the sheer number of properties that Chip has been able to touch, people are starting to know that this program is around.
And we're not
Take
charging
advantage
the
of it.
citizens anything for it?
We don't know.
But they give us the lot?
No, they keep the lot. That's the way this program was designed, is that it's voluntary compliance. So they sign a piece of paper saying that we can go and tear down their substandard structure. We go and get it done, and then the idea being that that lot will then be worth more than it was and either be sold, which we've seen in a number of circumstances, or be rebuilt upon immediately.
So once they sell it, we don't even ask for any money back from them for what we've done, for the money that we spent?
No.
Yeah, we don't currently.
That's why it's a grant from the federal government.
Exactly, but
Okay,
it's a win-win.
so, go ahead.
I'm just saying it's
Okay.
a win-win.
Thank you, Nate.
Thanks, guys.
The next item, E5, consider calling a special meeting of the City Council for a training workshop to be conducted by E. Allen Taylor, founding partner of Taylor, Olson, Atkins, Strala, and Elam LLP, on Wednesday, February 27th.
Yes, this is our annual training that we've had, our third or fourth annual training now from Allen Taylor, that we're trying to set for February 27th. So if your calendars work for that date, we would need a motion and vote on setting a special called council meeting for February 27th.
I move to call that meeting, Mr. Mayor.
Okay,
That'd be a lunchtime meeting, by the way.
okay, very good.
Second.
Motion second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries, thank you. All right, are there any citizens to address the council this evening? Okay, if not, media questions? Media have any questions? No? Okay, I don't know where Billy went. It's okay. All right, we have some appointments to make to Keep Sherman Beautiful Commission. Staff recommends the reappointment of Amanda Smith and Amanda Phillips, and the appointment of Bree Berry to the Keep Sherman Beautiful Commission. Council, what say you?
Motion.
Second.
Okay, motion second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, we're down to council comments quickly.
No comments at this time, Mr. Mayor.
Just want to thank everybody that came out for the MLK parade. It was really great. Lots of participants, a lot more than we had anticipated, and it was really great. The breakfast was really great. The following, that Monday. So appreciate everybody that came out for that.
No comment.
No comment.
No comment, Mr. Mayor.
Okay,
No comment.
all right, so time at 4:55, we'll take a motion.
Motion.
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you.
Y'all can stick around for P&Z if you want to.
Meeting after I turn 40.